and welcome to Colors of the Dark. I'm your co-host, Rebekah McKendry, and with me is Elric Kane. How's it going, sir?
I'm a little slow.
No,
I'm feeling a little slow at the
are
moment.
you like sloth-like?
I'm a little sloth-like. It's one
Hold
of those
on.
movies that gets into your system. And
That was too good of a segue, and I didn't get to ask my questions up at the top first. What's on your shirt? I wanted to see.
Oh, this is the one of the colored New Bev ones they did briefly, which I really love.
I thought you were wearing a Misfits shirt, and I was about to praise you because I didn't even think you knew who the Misfits were.
Well, the Misfits clearly ripped it off. Is it Crimson
Ghost? Yeah.
And so this is the Crimson Ghost that's been used for. I do like the Misfits actually, but not like I'm not hardcore as you know because I like Leonard Cohen. So that's as hardcore.
Tea and oranges. That's where he is tea and oranges.
Exactly. That's how.
Yeah, that's how Elric rolls.
Velvet Underground's my metal, so you know that's just how it is.
I will turn into a Martian any day of the week. But that said, so yeah, we decided. Now back to that awesome segue that I totally circumvented.
Yeah,
we have been trying to find something to see in theaters almost every week. We've been pretty good about it so far for the past couple of weeks since you got back from your crazy European tour and I got back from my camping tour. But this week there wasn't anything really opening. And then while I'm scrolling through the AMC site, I happened upon, for one night and one night only, Slotherhouse. And immediately my interest was piqued of, is that a killer sloth? It looks like the Scream poster, but with a killer sloth. And so I texted it over to Elric and I was like, I know this is not your jam in any capacity. This looks like the least likely movie that you would see, but you're going with me to see Slotherhouse. And he did.
Oh, I was excited to see it once I saw like the poster and so that was getting, decent reviews. I just don't like the straight to Sci-Fi Channel type stuff and that's usually because it's similar kind of movie, but usually because I think those movies are, usually a CG character as the killer. And in this, massive props and respect to them for a largely puppet animatronic which is really the highlight of the movie is this creature, which is quite funny and weird because it really knows its slasher conventions, but it's using just replacing it with a mascot sloth.
Yeah, so this is basically a sorority slasher. It is like straight up a sorority slasher, but with a sloth. And the whole setup, but before I get to the setup, it has such a good cold open where you see this sloth kind of cute. It's crawling along branches in the Amazon. Oh my gosh, look at the cute sloth. And this giant alligator or crocodile comes up. Which do they have in the Amazon? I'm going to go with alligator, but whatever. It comes up and it might be a caiman. I'm just going to spend a whole show on this part. Whatever it is, it comes up, it rips the sloth off the branches, takes it underwater. You assume it's going to be eaten. And then you see the sloth like crawling onto the shoreline, looking a little bit worse. And then you see this thing, caiman, roll over and its entire belly has been slashed open. And it was just like, oh, fuck, that's what we're doing. I am so into this.
It's been slaughtered.
Which
also I think probably like most humans, I hate when the title of a movie is said aloud in a film. It's usually the worst thing. In this movie, the only spoiler I'm going to give is one of the greatest line deliveries ever where somebody, we can't go in there. It's a slaughterhouse is just pure gold. So
it is. The setup is that you later find out that this sloth has been taken from its home. It's been brought here to the US with the intention of selling it as like a private animal, illegal and wild animal trade here in the US. And this guy has encountered this sloth and he's trying to get rid of it. And so he's trying to unload it on this kind of sorority girl who is looking for the thing that will make her blow up on Instagram, that will give her some type of influencer cred so that she can run for president of her sorority house. And she meets this guy and she's like, oh, if I had a pet sloth, this would do it. And she acquires the sloth. And now we have a pet sloth in a sorority house. And that is kind of our general setup. So I had to, it felt huge. That was the wild thing is I watch a lot of sci-fi films. I know Elric does not. And you always see kind of the budgetary restraints of it. Like it's a lot of green screen. It's, they're stock footage. It's a lot of budgetary constraints. This did not feel like this, to the point that afterwards, Elric and I were standing out in the parking lot talking about how they achieved this. And then I discovered the one thing that they did. they shot in Serbia. That is becoming kind of a hot place to shoot right now because you can get so much more bang for your buck there. Like you can really stretch a dollar. And so this seemed to be a primarily British cast for the most part, and then shot in Serbia. And it was primarily in one location, a really impressive location because it was this beautiful sorority house. But yeah, really solid acting. I had a blast with it. There were some absolutely crazy scenes throughout. Did a limited theatrical, so hopefully it will be coming, either doing an expanded theatrical or heading to VOD soon. And it's directed by Matthew Good, who I believe listens to the show. So thank you so much for making such a fun movie.
Yeah, I had more mixed feelings, I guess, than you. I really liked the creature. The movie felt small to me, so we've had opposite feelings, like because of the one location.
Camera work was so good.
I know. I didn't dislike any of those aspects. I just felt like I said at the start, like, oh, it's a sci-fi movie in terms of the drama, and I think you were more into the drama than I was. But that said, once it knew its tropes, I really respected like how it was using them, and it was really funny. Where it kind of loses me is probably about 3/4 of the way through, it goes so much more broad comedy than horror comedy. It just goes pure comedy, and it goes very big, and you'll know when it happens. It's something the Slot does, and it's fun. But there was a part of me that goes, oh, it kind of loses me a bit, and then it kind of won me back with the idea that it was kind of like watching a part 7 of a franchise that has now gone so far, but in one movie. So it's almost like you've watched all the parts 1 to 7 of Slotherhouse. But I really kind of dug it more than I thought I would. Really dug the creature. And I think the other thing we didn't talk about, which is we both agreed as we were watching, like the standout in terms of how it's put together is obviously in its direction, but in the way it's edited, had a really great pacing.
Great.
Kind of a lot of the jokes really kind of delivered on those kind of edit beats. And it turns out, unbeknownst to us at the time, that our friend Mike Mendez, who was the guest on the second part of the show, nothing to do with Slotherhouse, edited it, which was a fun thing to discover.
That was totally coincidental. Whereas I was like looking up because I wanted to know where they shot it and how they made the budget work and who did the camera photography and all this stuff. I was suddenly like, Mike Mendez, that's awesome. So we have to ask him about it in the second section.
Well, and apparently, and just this is good for aspiring editors too. He actually just took a holiday to hang around the streets of Serbia. He was just like lying around the streets, begging for work, and this is how you do it. So
and he
if you're looking for it's work.
Yeah, he just got picked up on a random film shoot. So there you go.
During the strike,
great.
If you go to Serbia.
Elric, now you're going to send a whole bunch of would-be editors to Serbia who believe your bullshit stories. So,
well, hey, the country could use a little help right now. Let's send some people over.
I've heard of a number of films being shot there, and everyone has had nothing but pleasant things to say about the crews. And like apparently it is becoming a pretty booming industry there. And I mean, even one of the ones that I was in talks with last year was like, and we're going to shoot in Serbia. And every single time I was like, well, I need a suburbs. Oh, we can build that. Well, we need this. Well, we can get that. Like it was not a hurdle. So I'm glad to see that this is kind of a way to kind of get back up.
Where was Barbarian? It was somewhere like that. It might not have been Serbia, but it was somewhere in that region because they had to make it look like Detroit for, some of the stuff, I think.
That's wild. That's absolutely
it's
wild.
One of those things it's hard to believe. But anyway, Slotherhouse is surprisingly fun. And I will say, I think I liked it quite a bit more than Cocaine Bear, even though it's using
I
found it funnier than Cocaine Bear.
I thought the jokes landed better. It was more, it knew what it was a little bit more than I thought Cocaine Bear
totally
did.
Yeah. It's you could tell the person understood horror in a way that I don't think the director of Cocaine Bear gets horror at all, but gets comedy. And so I think that, it's a comparable, but the reason I brought that up is because again, it was only probably playing once at the cinema, but so maybe it was an audience that were connected to the movie, but people were laughing a lot.
There were cheers.
Yeah, it was a crowd-pleasing movie. Even if I was like somewhat mixed, I still enjoyed myself, and I'm glad I went. So
here's the Slotherhouse throughout.
I did. Yes. There's a couple real big laughs.
My entire desk just fell over.
Oh.
This is all for the people who now get to watch us on YouTube that just saw all of my books.
Everything just took a dive off her table, which means our next movie, The Dive.
Oh, God.
God, you're meant to pick up on that. But if I have to do all the work, that's fine.
I got into this.
I've had a headache all day. I'll just do all the work.
Yeah, we got to do better.
You're a little sloth-like to my dive, but okay.
Less punny segues.
But yeah, we watched. So we were recommended a movie called The Dive after our shark episode, and I'd heard about it. I knew it was coming to theaters. I knew it was about. I think I got it mixed up in my head with there was some movie that was coming out about. I think it's a documentary about somebody doing the deepest dive ever.
I saw that pop up on my queue a couple days ago, and I immediately started. So I'll be watching that.
Yeah,
soon.
I'm very curious to see
but
that.
Yeah, that's a documentary.
Yeah, and I thought that's what it was for some reason. Anyway, I started watching this movie. I think I was the first of us to watch it, and I'm watching it for about 10 minutes, I think, before I was like, this relationship between these two girls just feels familiar. And I remember like kind of not liking the characters because they have a negative relationship. And then if they start this dive, and I realized, oh my God, I've seen this movie before. And sure enough, 2 years ago, there was a movie called Breaking the Surface from Norway.
Which we liked.
Which is an interesting movie. Yeah, it was very well made. I feel the same about this, where I like the movie a little, both movies a little less than how well made they are.
Was it Norway? I thought
that one's Norway,
Swedish.
yeah. And I think one of the differences here, so this is a remake. There's a couple very, very faithful remake. Like they're very, very similar in terms of drama and relationship. There was a couple action beats that they did different things to try to help the person. That I actually think the American version was more clever in that way.
I thought so too. I found
thing with a car that I thought was very cool.
They left out the dog, which I was like, thank you. I will say there's a dead dog in the original version that definitely, and this is just like a mental thing. Dead dogs will always pull me out if it's taken seriously in a movie. And it was my one complaint with Breaking the Surface, and they left that out of this version. Smart move. So yeah, this one, I actually enjoyed this, possibly more than the original, because it did get really clever in the second and third acts. Like you could see that they were trying to stay a step ahead of what the original one did, and I liked that.
Yeah, I think it's so hard when you, especially with these remakes, when they're only a year or so apart or 2 years apart. I find them, it's, like Let the Right One In was back in the day. It's sometimes a little hard right when you first see it, because you're like, okay, this is so familiar. The one thing the original has over it is the setting and location is so
gorgeous
because it's cold. Yeah, where they were going diving at a time where you probably don't need to dive. So when things go wrong, it makes sense. Whereas this one's in picturesque, beautiful, sunny day when they start, and I'm kind of like, well, what happened in this one?
Well, let's back up and give everybody the premise, because I think we covered Breaking Surface probably 2.5 years ago. And the whole setup is two sisters go diving, and it's in this like super remote location. In the original, it is this snowy, why is anybody going out diving in this god-awful snow, desolate Scandinavian landscape? This one, it's sunny, it's remote, but it's still like sunny and beautiful. And they get, I wrote it down, 28 meters down, because I was like, how far is it when it gets scary? And they get trapped under rocks. And
one of them does.
One of them does. And so the other sister is trying to figure out what to do, but the other sister is trapped at the bottom of the dive area under rocks, knowing that their oxygen is running out and that they're trapped there and can't get out. So then it's up to the other sister to figure out what to do, how to get her out. She can't move the rocks. It's too remote for them to get service, for them to get out, to get help, things like that. And she's battling oxygen duration. This one I felt did a lot more clever stuff. I actually really enjoyed watching this one.
Yeah, and the drama of it is that they're estranged sisters who are half sisters, and I think they're the older one, who's the more experienced diver, has the feeling of, oh, you got the better life than I did because you had the more stable childhood. There's flashbacks to their life. They're very simple movies, but if you like and I think that it was a good rec that we got, because if you're into deep underwater action films and stuff, there you don't have many to choose from, and these ones are very realistically treated. So I thought it was pretty solid. But again, having seen the other one, I think if you don't watch the original, if you want to enjoy this purely, just
go straight into this one. This is out now on VOD. I saw it pop up on my leaderboard on Amazon yesterday, so it's getting some play there. But really fun, especially if you're into your aquatic horror or your kind of disaster horror. This is a fun one. So this is called The Dive, just out from RLJ. Okay, so those are the two that we both watched. What else you got?
I got a couple Shudder ones. I'll start with the one I really liked. And I think it's really well made. And again, sometimes a movie can be super well made and maybe doesn't quite go to that extra thing that you're looking for whatever reason. But this one is really well done, called Rebirth.
I keep hearing about this. I'm excited to see it.
It was just in theaters too, so it had a limited thing. I don't think it's on Shudder yet, because I asked for a screener from the same people who sent us The Dive after I watched it. I was like, ooh, I've been curious about this movie. Directed by Laura Moss, first feature. It's very similar in terms of the ideas, and obviously not intentional because they're made at the same time, as the TV version of Dead Ringers, which came out, has a lot of the same
Okay.
themes are happening in some ways. I actually, and I thought Dead Ringers was like the best looking, one of the most interesting things I saw this year. But I
Yeah, I
actually think,
really liked that
yeah, I
show.
love the aesthetic of it. I didn't really relate to the characters in Dead Ringers, if you know what I mean. Like they're kind of weird. The sisters are super
They're
weird.
supposed to be.
Yeah, and I couldn't
That's
really relate to them, but
that's
I
the
liked the
whole
show.
thing.
In this, I could relate to a lot more to the actual drama of this. So it's basically a very aloof morgue technician, I guess is what she works. She works in the morgue. She is constantly dealing with dead bodies, is kind of difficult to talk to. She just has no social skills at all. She's very good at what she does, played by Marin Ireland, who, if you look her up, you'll go, oh yeah, she's in every movie and a lot of horror films too of the last few years. And she's an interesting character, and she's working on something you don't really know what she's working on the side. And she's taking things from work. And so you know something's kind of wrong. And the tone's very dark. It's got a very dark, kind of somber tone from start to finish. And there's this nurse, who works upstairs, same building, but upstairs in a totally different world, is really good at her job. But one day her little girl is staying with somebody else because she's kind of strapped thin, and her little girl dies and had some sort of I can't remember what it was, but like almost like a hepatitis or something, and passes away. And it's just unthinkable because she's only like 6. And that body goes to the morgue. And this nurse is obviously, out of her mind. And as she's leaving the hospital after she's gotten the news that her daughter has died, she's leaving. She sees the morgue woman stuffing something big into the back of her car. And it just piques her interest, but she doesn't know what it is. And she soon will find out that the morgue person has taken her daughter's body, and which is obviously upsetting in its own right because she hasn't seen her daughter's body again. And when she follows her to her house, she finds that her daughter is still somewhat alive, and that this woman has been working on something to reanimate. Basically, she says, I'm working on a cure. And she's like, cure for what? And she's like, death. And but not in that big reanimator way. This is the opposite treatment of those kind of stories. And it began, the nurse wants to take care of her 24/7, her daughter, and so it's got a lot of emotion to it. It's very well made. It's interesting with the ideas. If I had any critique, it's that like right when it ended, I was like, oh man, if that was the end of the first act, I'd be off the hook curious where you would push the story. But it kind of, it makes sense for the movie you're watching. It's totally fine as its own thing. But when it ended, I was like, oh man, now I want to know where you could have pushed this from this more kind of realistic into the next level. So no real, those might sound like spoilers, but there really are just kind of the setup of the emotional and weird side of how they're going to keep, there's certain things they need to keep her going, that basically create the horror. But yeah, I think this will be for people like the more grounded, realistic, more downbeat horror. This is I thought it was a good first film. Rebirth.
Okay, I'm going to continue on our mortician journey here.
Ooh.
This is one that was recommended to me on Twitter that it took me a couple of months to get to because I kept going, I don't know how, it doesn't look like me. And then this Sunday, I have a family full of COVID right now.
Congrats.
And so I know,
family.
right? It's been a week. And so while we were spending a fun Sunday evening quarantining, and I was specifically in the back room trying not to be around my sneezing kids, I decided, I was like, I'll go ahead and pop this in. Play Dead. And this is a Tubi original. And I will say, with love, I have been kind of hit or miss on some of the Tubi originals. Some of them I'm like, holy shit, that was really good. And then other ones I've been like, oh, I don't know about that one. This was one that I rather enjoyed. So well done on this one, Tubi original. And then once I looked it up, I was like, of course it's good. It's Patrick Lussier directed it.
Oh, wow.
A Tubi original. Yeah. This is the person who did My Bloody Valentine, Drive Angry. He's got a lot of really nice horror cred to his name. The whole setup of this one is that there's this girl, Chloe. She is a medical student in her second year, and you find out really early on that her dad has killed himself, and he basically left her and her brother, and they're trying to get by, but the insurance won't pay, his life insurance won't pay out because it was a suicide. And so they're kind of strapped with the house, and the home loan people are trying to take the house away because the brother and sister have no money. And so the brother has teamed up with some other person and has tried to rob a place, but that one guy gets shot in the process and he gets sent to the morgue. And then the brother makes his way back home to her and he's like, oh my God, this whole thing went down. And then he suddenly realizes that the guy's phone had a whole text message about us planning the robbery. And she's like, you fucking planned a robbery over text. And now it's on this guy's dead body sitting in the morgue downtown. And so she comes up with the idea to fake her own death because she's a medical student and knows how to do this. So she's going to fake her own death so that she can kind of pose as like a drug overdose, get sent to the morgue. And then as soon as she wakes up in the morgue, she can get the phone and get the fuck out of there. That's the plan. That's your entire first act. So she basically takes the medicine to make herself seem dead. She does it right outside of the hospital. So she gets discovered real quickly, gets rolled right into the morgue. She wakes up a little bit later. She's in the morgue. And then she sees the coroner. And the coroner does not realize that she's alive yet, but she realizes that this coroner is doing some seriously shady stuff. It's like really twisted. And this is played by Jerry O'Connell.
Oh, I like him.
And I know he was really fun in this. And I will not reveal any of the reveals at that point, but there are a lot of really good twists in this. There was a lot of times when I was guessing that it was going to feel really predictable of like, oh, okay, he's like desiccating bodies or whatnot. No, it goes different directions. There was definitely a number of moments where I was kind of applauding that it did not go where I was kind of predicting it to go. And then ultimately, the bulk of the movie takes place in this morgue after Jerry O'Connell realizes that she has seen what he's been doing. And therefore, it kind of turns into this chase, as he's trying to catch her to kill her. Really good tension sequences. And the whole thing is set in the morgue for the most part, but it does not feel its size. Like you can tell that this is a small movie, that basically it had one kind of bigger robbery scene at the beginning, and then it's in a house, and then the rest is in the morgue with just Jerry O'Connell and this girl. But it does not, it's directed and shot so well that you don't necessarily feel the restriction on the kind of self-containment. But yeah, I enjoyed this one. Thought it was a really fun watch. It's definitely kind of a dark comedy because it does have a lot of moments that you can tell are supposed to be kind of more comedic in the discoveries. So yeah, on Tubi. So you can go watch it for free right now. And I did discover it's on Amazon as well, but you have to pay. Or at least there was one platform on Amazon that kind of prompted me to pay. And then I was like, wait, free on Tubi. Let's do that. So this is
an ad thing, I guess, for some people.
I will watch the ads anytime. I'm on strike right now. I'll watch ads so that I can save my $4. So yeah, Play Dead on Tubi. This one was fun.
You've inspired me to research on Letterboxd after this. I hope this exists. A list of Tubi movie originals. I want to look through a list. I don't believe I've ever watched one. I mean, I've watched a lot of films on Tubi and a lot of like low budget things that pop up there, but I don't believe I've watched one of their originals. And so I want to look through the list and see if somebody's ranked them so I know where to jump in. I thought the one Bed Rest looked interesting. I thought about watching that one. So yeah, maybe I'll check it out. If somebody,
I've got a couple queued up that as well. If you find that list, send it to me because I've got a couple queued up that, much like Play Dead, have just been kind of circulating in my to watch list for a while. Give me the motivation to move forward with them, sir.
Yes. So I'll save judgment because I haven't seen it. Yeah. Okay, my next one is called Perpetrator. I did a big festival circuit for a long time and just finally got to Shudder by Jennifer Reeder from Canada. This is a film that I am going to talk about in this way. I'm going to give a caveat to that. Sometimes you watch a film that's craply made, and so it's so hard to talk about because you're like, I don't like this movie and it's badly made, right? So that's not the case with this movie, but sometimes you just are not gonna vibe with a movie. And I think this is the movie I've least vibed with in a long time, but and I say that with like appreciation because it's got such a very specific tone and vibe that I'm not just saying this. Like, it's not like when I say this about Microwave Massacre and I say it's somebody's favorite movie, I truly don't know if it is. This film will really find an audience. This is going to
I have to tell you, I met a person at a convention once who talked about how we always use that as the joke. And he said he did have a Microwave Massacre poster in his bedroom.
He makes love under I love that.
He does.
Yeah, or he did until he put that poster. But Perpetrator is so well put together, and it's so specific that the very things it's achieving, just for me, it was like a very kind of absurdist comedic tone, satirical, but also pushing into like a Cronenberg thing at times. A lot of things I like. For some reason,
you've got me at absurdist Cronenberg.
Well, that's why this is why I don't want to put people off seeing it so much as but I also am not someone who's going to do podcast lying saying I like this movie when I don't. This did not work for me personally at all. But as I was watching it, I kept going, you know what, this is so well put together, and they've achieved what they're going for, and this is going to be somebody's jam. Like it could even be yours. That's the thing. I'd be curious to know, to be honest. It is.
I'm writing it down.
Yeah, it's a young. I know it did well in the festival circuit. It's a young teenager who's about to turn 18, lives with her dad, and they seem to have a very strange relationship, which makes sense later on. As she's about to turn 18, and they talk in code, and a lot of things would make a lot more sense the second time you watch it, because a lot of things that are happening seem artificial while you're watching them, and that might have been why I struggled to get into. I like things a little more grounded. At the start, makes sense in the long run. She is sent to spend time with her aunt, which was a win for me, because her aunt is played by a very mannered and very surreal version of Alicia Silverstone, which I appreciate because I love Alicia Silverstone. And she's kind of teaching her about this power she has. This is the kind of Cronenberg-y elements where she can almost feel the empathy in victims' pain and see the faces of victims. And this is set in a town where the cold open is just a girl, going down the street, and an abductor coming, masked abductor, and a lot of girls have been going missing. Where had it been that straight slasher town, I probably would have just, been kind of a bit more into it. But where it goes more ambitious than that is in the tone and the kind of world. And it's like a high school, a kind of all girls high school kind of, well, it's not all girls, there's multiple, but it's like everyone's wearing uniforms. So it's going for a stylized version of life. And so that's interesting. And again, like I said, some people, that's going to be why they like this movie. For me, that just I don't know, something about it. It's so funny. Tone is such a weird thing with movies, and the ones that keep you up, at least this one is, like doing what it set out to do, which is not a crap movie. That's the difference. I thought it was interesting. It does. There are a couple scenes, I think, where has to use a CGI thing for her power that just isn't very good, to be honest. That's the one element that doesn't feel as well put together, but that happens in a lot of movies nowadays. So I will be more curious to hear your thoughts on this too, and audience and listeners can write to me telling me why I'm wrong, but I also accept that I'm not wrong, because it's my taste, but that I do think this is one that will have its kind of cult following. So an interesting movie. So it's really about her trying to trying to find the perpetrator who's been doing this to the girls. And there's all this kind of like very Cronenbergian Scanners emotional backdrop stuff that, if you've seen Scanners, will make a lot of sense.
Okay, it's on my have to watch list. I have to watch. I have eventually, and then I have the I have to watch. So
it could deserve a rebuttal. So
okay, I will rebut or possibly agree. We'll see how it goes. So yeah, it has gone on my October watch list, which is what that is the stuff I have to watch for various podcasts and assignments and projects. So it's going to be covered,
including all the Halloween movies.
All the Halloween. Oh God, I've got that on here. Not all of them. I think I've got 4 that I have to rewatch.
I'll revisit like a couple.
Like I don't think I've seen Halloween 6 in a really long time. I've got H2O, Halloween Resurrection. Yeah, there's some that
you've never seen the second Rob Zombie one, H2O.
No, right? I've seen that's. I like the second Rob Zombie more than the first.
I really like the second one, but we should keep.
And thus we're revealing our cards. So as Elric just foreshadowed, we are doing a screen drafts episode for all the Halloween films
in October with Graham Skipper and Billy Ray Bruton. So the entire episode that had controversy around Friday 13th.
Our Freddy versus Jason. Yeah, this was an intense.
I feel like this is less controversial. This will be more like weird taste, like people's bizarre taste, I guess.
Yeah, that's got to be H2O at number 1. Thanks, Billy Ray.
I will say, when I saw that in theaters when I was young, I really liked it, but I remember walking out of it and looking it up on like IMDb, and it was the first movie I remember seeing in a theater that was like 77 minutes long, and I was like, wait, that's not even a movie. Like, that's too, how's that even in my brain? It wasn't even a feature-length movie because of that.
I think it came out, was it like our freshman year of college? Because I remember it being a pilgrimage when I was at college, because it wasn't playing, like we only had like a really small little art house theater in my actual college town, and we had to drive 2 towns over to go to the theater at the mall. And I remember all of us like piling into my shitty Volkswagen Rabbit to go see it. And it was like a pilgrimage to go see H2O. So yeah, that would have been around that time.
It's fun.
I gotta revisit. Revisit.
But it will be a fun episode. We'll remind people closer to the time.
Yeah. So I'm going to kick to my Shudder watch for this week. So I watched one. This was another one. It popped up on my queue and immediately I was like, oh, this sounds like a subgenre that I love. And that subgenre doesn't have a name. I'm going to eventually come up with a name for it. Bunch of people trapped in a place and they don't know why they're trapped there. That is my subgenre. So I love these movies. I call them kind of Cube-esque movies. I'd say Saw, but Cube kind of predated that. So Cube is, or Colobos, there's a bunch of them that did it before Saw. But yeah, that kind of, we don't know why we're here and we're all trapped here. So now we have to sit here and figure it out while some guy kills one of us every hour. I love those movies and I will watch every single one of them. I watched this because I thought it had that premise. If you watch the trailer, it feels like it had that premise. That is not the premise of this movie. The premise of Monument, which is a Polish film from 2018, just hitting Shudder now, is that a bunch of people wake up on this cold bus, like it's just this bus. And at first they're kind of confused about why they're there, but then you quickly realize that they are basically like interns or kind of low-level employees that are headed to this desolate rural hotel, luxury hotel, where they will all be working different levels of staff. Like some of them will be on laundry, some of them are doing maintenance, some of them are doing the cooking, some of them are actual maids in the room. And there's like 30 of them. And they get there and they're all assigned different roles. And then they go to work doing their different assigned positions. And that is how the movie is set up, where 1 second you're with a group of girls who are all the maids. And then you're with 2 of the maintenance workers outside smoking. And then you're with the laundry attendants. And for the first third or more of this movie, I was like, there's nothing horror here. It felt like coffee and cigarettes, where I was just watching interesting conversations. It would just be like, here's the first time I started my period. And this is a 20-minute conversation. And now we're with the laundry worker as she talks about, her ex-boyfriend and things like that. Like it was just interesting conversations that were occurring around this hotel with these lower level staff. And then occasionally, after about the 20-minute mark, something really weird, absurdist, scary, or off-putting starts to happen every few scenes. It's still like you're just watching vignettes around a hotel. You never see any of the guests. You just are with these employees. Every couple of vignettes, something weird will happen. Like a girl will just walk out of a room after having this, kind of boring conversation. And then on the way out, she'll just step over a dead body. And you're just like, wait, go back. Wait, the fuck was that? And so there's enough there to kind of keep you interested because you're like, I don't have a clue what's going on. By the third act, you begin to piece together what's happening, but you're still not there. It basically keeps its cards really close to the vest until kind of the final 10 minutes. And then it's got a massive, massive twist. It's still, parts of this movie I loved. I loved the premise of it. I loved what it did. I loved how weird it was. I loved the absurdist swings. It took a lot for me to keep going through some of it. But that said, by the end, I was glad I had, because I found the payoff to be kind of fascinating. It wasn't anything that we haven't seen before. It was just, I suddenly enjoyed the presentation of how they did it. So I say that kind of as my predecessor for, this is allegorical. It's a slow burn. Not every scene is going to be horror by any stretch. You're not actually going to get anything that I would call meaty horror until the very end of it. But then I looked up how and why this was made, and I suddenly had a lot more kind of reverence for it. It was made by a group of students who had just graduated from university in Poland and wanted something for their acting credits. And so a group of acting students kind of built out these different scenes taking place around a hotel with the staff. And that is where this came from. And it's really well shot. So suddenly all these little vignettes I was really impressed with, because that's ultimately what it was a group of students who wrote a film. And then I was like, oh, fuck yeah, I wish my students did this. That is amazing. And then it gives you enough horror towards the end to keep it going. So this is Monument. You might actually like this, because I will say it's got a more kind of slow burn, cerebral quality to it, and a lot of really good, interesting conversations along the way.
And I might watch it if watching student films for a living wasn't our job.
I know, right?
You might have lost me on that detail.
I literally did 20 this afternoon. So, but that said, this isn't shot like a student film. Like, this is really, really nice. Like, this feels above student film level. Like, that was
some
kind
pretty
of
good student films. Some that transcend that. But
yeah, this was shocking to me. And then suddenly I went like, oh, that's a really smart thing. It'd be like if all of, the thesis projects just suddenly found a way to kind of string themselves together and actually sell it as a feature. I was like, that's kind of next level brilliant. So that was Monument, now on Shudder.
Okay. Do you know the Russo brothers?
I do. They actually shot something while I was in Canada. They were shooting something in the town as well.
They do all the Marvel stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
They are Agbo is their company. They have a brand new horror film that hit streamers that you have to pay for, called All Fun and Games. I had never heard of it, but then looked up. It's about a group of teens in Salem who find this cursed knife. It kind of had a vibe in terms of the setup of the third Fear Street, with the set in that time period. They find this old cursed knife that one of the younger brother brings home to his older brother, played by Asa Butterfield from Hugo, and it forces them. It has this inscription that forces you. It basically possesses whoever has it and says the words on the knife that then make you. It's something like you must play the game or something, and then goes around basically forcing the other kids to play this game with it, and they're going to die horrific deaths. It's it also has stars as his sister Natalie Dyer, who's the one of the lead girls on Stranger Things.
Yep.
And Annabeth Gish. Had a lot on the surface to get excited about. Salem, fun and games, good cast, Russo brothers. About it's nice and short at 80 minutes. A lot of positives there. So if I ended my review here, that would be a good place to go watch the movie. But I hated this movie.
Oh God!
It made 80 minutes feel like 3 hours. I don't know what it was, and I wasn't alone at the person, but who I watched it with. Now that said, it has a fun premise, and it kind of starts like, oh, okay, I'm curious. It does that edit thing where every time you see something happen, it flashes back and forth 20 times with flash frames to scare you. It was just too much. It really was. It was by the same company, the British company, who obviously probably working with the Agbos, and it might have been made on the cheap. So, it might not be a big Agbo film. It might be a small one, who made Choose or Die last year, which I preferred that to this. That had at least a playful thing with the kind of the gamification part of this. This just gets kind of nasty and feels just a touch generic, and I try not to save much space on here ever for negative talk, but for me this was just like, it was one of those ones where you're just like, fuck man, it just felt like, I don't know, it felt like the AI version of something like this, which was disappointing. You're just
in a bad mood this
week, because I'll end after this by retelling people, because I actually had to pull one more thing out here, because I did find a couple of these movies did not work for me. I want to tell people to watch One False Move instead, because this has just come.
One False Move.
It's a fucking brilliant. I remembered having seen it, but I didn't remember it well. Directed by Carl Franklin from '92. It just got a big restoration by Criterion and stuff. But this is the best freaking '90s thriller. It is.
I've never even heard of this.
Yeah,
Billy Bob
Thornton co-wrote it and is one of the bad guys in it. But Bill Paxton, for the Paxton heads out there, and we are all Paxton heads.
Paxton heads.
Heads. Bill Paxton.
It's like Parrot Heads, but Paxton Heads. Like, we have a convention. There's shirts.
I love Paxton.
It's everything.
He said you're stewed but what? He's the greatest thing ever. Anyway, this is one of those movies that if you're and if you're not, you should be watching. A Simple Plan is one of those great films that is Billy Bob and Bill Paxton.
Oh yeah.
And I remember this movie, but I didn't really remember how it opens. Kind of like Henry. It's got this. It starts in L.A. and I'm bringing it up here because I did want to end on a positive note, because I saw this movie that was like seeing it for the first time, and it was one of the best things I've seen this year. And it is, it opens in LA, and basically it's at an all black party, and they're all just hanging out, these people in like a neighborhood of LA. And this girl played by Linda Williams, really good performance. She knocks on the door, and they all know her, and they've got a handy cam out, and they're just having a good kind of birthday vibe. And she comes in, and then, you know, they're happy to see her. And then she goes, oh, I forgot something in my car. And she goes to open the door, and she lets Billy Bob and his partner come in. And now it's a home invasion. It goes real dark. It goes Henry dark in the first 5 minutes. It's like they're coming in, and they're looking for this drug money. And it is a brutal, grisly opening crime that opens this movie. And then it hard cuts to, I want to say Arkansas. I'm sorry if I get that totally wrong. It'll come back to me if it wasn't Arkansas. Yeah, it is Arkansas, where Bill Paxton is a small town sheriff, and kind of clueless, but also just the coolest dude ever. They call him Hurricane because he won't even sit to finish his food. He's always moving and talking. And, you know, he kind of dreams of like being a big shot sheriff, but of course he's in this small town. And he gets wind that these criminals are probably going to come back there because that's where one of them is from. And so these LA detectives come out there, and they have to work with him. And it's basically them then just waiting for these criminals to come. And then there's a really cool twist in some of the character relationships. It was just like watching something that you just don't see anymore, which is just like perfect dynamite crime thrillers.
Wow.
that I wish there was more of. But watching this one like again, and I remembered enough, like I remembered the start, but because I probably saw it on TV or something when I first saw it, this was like seeing a whole new movie. So I thought, hey, let's end on, or at least my picks. I want to end on a really good recommendation for people. One False Move.
Nice. Okay. I just added that to the list as well. I've never even heard of this. So I'm really excited, especially after the last crime thriller that you gave me, which I can't even remember, but it was the one with like the incredibly star-studded cast, like Val Kilmer and all the different police trainees, FBI trainees.
Mindhunter.
Mindhunter was so
Mindhunters,
good.
Yeah. That one's
so
a totally
good.
different vibe, but yes, yeah. No, this
Okay.
this one's a lot more real. But
you get my crime thriller love. Okay, so before I go, I have a book I want to talk about, but before I get there, I at least want to give some love to One Piece. And this is the new live action show that just came to Netflix. This is not horror, I will say. Like, for those people, when I talk about it on the show, I'm going to say it's horror adjacent, but it's not, don't go in expecting impaling. Actually, there are a lot of heads flying. So yeah, but it's not horror in the truest sense of horror. It's a fun story about a little boy who grows up and really wants to be a pirate, and this incredibly brutal pirate has stolen all this money, and as he is being put to death, he basically announces, like, my money is your money for the taking. It's out there, go find it. And thus sets loose all of this like huge amount of pirates heading towards the seas. It exists in this hyper world. I had been a huge fan of the One Piece manga and then the One Piece series and movies that they had created for years. And then I'd kind of forgotten about it for a while. And then I started watching this. This is just really good. It's really well shot. It's really well cast. I just had a blast with it. So I at least wanted to mention, just because I had so much fun watching this. And when I say it is horror adjacent, like, one of the pirates is a really scary clown who can take his own head off. There's crazy gun battles throughout. There's giant sea monsters throughout. It's just kind of a massive universe. But so if you're looking for something a little different, kind of fantasy, sci-fi adjacent with some definitely horror tones to it, One Piece, even if it's your first time visiting this franchise, it's a trip. Now on Netflix. But I figured I would end with a book because and I will say, One Piece, they used all horror directors through the entire thing, and it's just really well shot. But it's like directors from Hannibal, Walking Dead, Bates Motel, the guy who did The Terror. Like, it's just all of these horror directors making it out. So that's probably why it feels so, it's just got these really good scary beats to it. Anyways, I wanted to end with a book that I didn't even write down when this came out, but I just read it last week. Our Shadows Have Claws. This is a YA horror, but it's a collection of Latin American horror stories geared towards YA audience. And basically, for everybody who is suddenly like, ugh, YA horror, the only difference between YA and adult is the age of the protagonist. Like there's still going to be blood, there's still going to be gore, there's still going to be sexual situations, drug use. Like there's a very fine line in the publishing space between YA horror and adult horror. And if you think about it, a lot of times people kind of waltz back and forth like Grady Hendrix does all the time, where some of his protagonists are teens, but then you have to kind of classify, is it YA? Is My Best Friend's Exorcism YA, or is it adult? So it's a real fine line. So don't let that turn you off by any stretch. But this was a collection of short stories geared towards YA, all from Latin American authors, but also all kind of deeply ingrained in Latin American culture. I learned about a lot of kind of folklore monsters that I had not heard about before. And then there was just some really cool ones. Like there was one about an empty subway car in the Bronx. That was it was honestly one of my favorites, because that kind of setting right there of an empty subway car at night in the Bronx, it was just beautiful for me. There's one, I had to translate it, The Old Man with the Bag, who I don't know if that's like a long running folk story or not, but basically he steals children. There's gorgeous artwork throughout. There's vampires, lots of monsters in this. So it was just a really cool, so many brujas, so many witches, that it was just an absolutely fun read that I honestly binged this because the stories are so short. They're like 4 pages long each. So I binged this over the course of like 5 days while my family has COVID. So yeah, this is called Our Shadows Have Claws, and this is out now. So definitely check this out.
That feels like a pretty good thematic segue on its own.
It does. Again, hadn't done that on purpose, but definitely a good thematic changeover. So let's go ahead and take a quick break, hear from a sponsor, and then let's bring on our guests, directors of the new film Satanic Hispanics. Hello and welcome back to Colors of the Dark. I am so excited to be talking to 3 amazing filmmakers and friends tonight with their brand new film, Satanic Hispanics. We have Gigi Guerrero, Mike Mendez, and Alejandro Brugues joining us tonight. So thank you all so much. Elric and I watched this last night, and absolute blast. Some of these segments were so amazing. So I'm going to start with kind of the general question. I know you've been asked a bajillion times. How did this happen? I'm always impressed by anthologies because it's usually either a group of people who have the idea or one person who's then kind of spreading the seed. So where did this one start?
It was a little bit of a group effort. So I had made Tales of Halloween with Axel Carolyn for Epic Pictures in the past, and I like anthologies. Let me start with that. I think anthologies are cool, largely because it's fun to watch, and I also enjoy working with filmmakers. I think it's really great to like be able to collaborate in a different way. It's like a jam session with filmmakers, and I think that's a lot of fun. So Epic was always really open to doing another one. Also, when this was kind of like floating around was Hispanic Heritage Month 2020, and there was like an open letter that John Leguizamo and Lin-Manuel Miranda and Fede Alvarez and like 270 showrunners and filmmakers wrote, kind of going, hey, Los Angeles is made up of 49% Latino people. Only 4% are actually screenwriters. And the stories that are told are always cartel stories, or we're gang members, or we're in jail, or whatever. And it would be great if we got to tell our stories. And that was like, oh, that's really cool. And so we were just thinking of different things. And then one day I was hanging out with Alejandro, and he just kind of burst out, when the fuck are we making Satanic Hispanics, the All Latino Horror Anthology? And it was kind of like, oh.
Did you have that name like already? Like you just burst out with it?
So
no, Mike had brought it up.
Yeah, Norman Cabrera, who's a amazing makeup artist who's worked on Hellboy and a lot of stuff for Guillermo del Toro and Rick Baker. We used to like make music videos for this band called Municipal Waste, these thrash metal things.
I made a Municipal Waste video.
Did you really?
Kidding. Yeah, I did.
I didn't know that. That's amazing. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Small world. So with Norman being Cuban and me being Salvadorian, and the DP was Argentinian, we one day Norman's like, we're the Satanic Hispanics, and it just sort of stuck. So
that is amazing. Okay, so then how did you get the super team together?
We literally started talking about that, and the first thing we said, well, we need a good group, but we also want to have friends, because what's the point of doing something like this? We want to have fun, so let's bring some friends. And while we were still on the phone, talking, I was texting Ed Sanchez and telling him, Mike and I are going to do this anthology called Satanic Hispanics, and you're in it. And Ed replied, cool. and then the moment we hung up, Mike texted Gigi, and I think Gigi says that it only said Satanic Hispanics. What do you think?
Yeah, Gigi, yeah, I called Gigi, and I don't even remember the conversation. You remember it better than I do.
Yeah, no, literally, I first of all, I was like, Mike, how'd you get my number? And then that was the first question. I was like, wait a second. And yeah, I mean, definitely it was at the title, they totally had me, and I'm happy to be here with my best friend and producer Rainer, of all things, Luchagore. And I remember Rainer, I think, was even in the office with me. And Mike just texted me, Satanic Hispanics, what do you think? Can you hop on a call? And I literally was like, well, at the name, I'm in. What is this? And how'd you get my number? And like, who's
one of those questions.
That last part, but that's okay. But yeah. How did I get your number? I have no idea. Yeah.
And it was awesome. Like that's the kind of title. I'm just glad that even if it was a working title back then, I'm so glad that it has stuck, because it's so funny. It just, I don't know, it captivates right away. People will right away ask questions, and I think us Latinos have such a double sense of humor with meanings and puns that it could be taken in any direction. And I was in right away, for sure.
And then what we started talking, and we said, if we're gonna do this, we want to show all kinds of Latinos. So we had Mike, who's first generation. We had Gigi, Ed, and me that immigrated here. Well, Gigi went to Canada, but we wanted someone from Latin America. So we started going off the list of people, and of course, Demian was at the top of the list, because who doesn't love Terrified?
Oh my gosh, that's such
film,
a tight movie, and that's literally. Elric watched this before I did, and he texted me, and he was like, "That guy's segment is crazy.
It's
like
amazing.
Because it's early too."
His style.
Yeah. And then I didn't know Demian, but we had been in a panel together with Gigi, so I figured out his phone number pretty much like Mike did with Gigi, and and I called him. Like I was going to into prep of a movie, and the moment I landed from the hotel, I called Demian and I said, "Hey, I'm Alejandro. We're making this anthology called Satanic Hispanics, and we want you in." And he was like, "Oh, that's super cool. I have other commitments. I'm not sure." And I said, "No, I'm not asking you. You are going to do it." And from that point on, it was a constant of me bullying Demian into being in the movie.
Now, did he do the wraparound?
No, I did.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
Oh, that was so good. So how did you come up with the concept for the wraparound? Because that I found to be so I'm always impressed by wraparounds, especially when they're woven in and just as tight plot wise as any of the segments.
Well, they're often the worst part. They're often the part that
and that's the thing though. And I felt like, why is that? Why is it so often that I'm going back to like the original Tales from the Crypt, from the 60s, where, it's usually a group of people and there's someone telling them stories, and then you find out they're all dead. and that's just such a common,
way
trope.
Way to spoil it for the rest of us.
Yeah,
exactly.
I
know.
Was that in
1969? I know it's. I think it's 1973 actually. So anyway,
Mike, what's Gigi's number? There's only a few 100,000 listeners, so it's probably fine between us.
I'm sure it's fine.
Cool.
No problem.
We'll
after the show anyway. But anyway, I always thought the wraparound was such an important thing, and I thought it would be kind of cool to like have something you really sink your teeth into that starts the movie, carries it through, and kind of interweaves it, and then finishes it with it. So the audience, is kind of been on a journey and has a storyteller to follow. So I'd had this idea for a character many years ago that, was kind of, I didn't know what to do with it. It was just kind of like an idea of like, oh, maybe this would be a character that kind of knows everything and just kind of travels. I won't say exactly why he travels. I'll let that, and won't spoil anything here. But that seemed like a good method, because we were thinking about different legends and stories about South America and Latin America, and there was something about the idea of just traveling up and down Central America, down South America, and I was like, wow, a character like that has been around would know all the legends, he would know the lore, and that would be kind of a good entry point to kind of get the idea of this of the different myths and legends of Latin America. So it seemed like a real neat little vehicle to do that.
That's cool. It was such a tight wraparound.
And I think usually you don't get a big ending with a wraparound. I think that's part of it. And I think in this, with that, we won't give spoilers, but you get it's a real movie. It's its own segment by the end, and has I thought one of the most interesting looking big bads I've seen in a long time in terms of design. Just
cool.
Super
that's
again
Norman Cabrera.
Yeah, Norman Cabrera, who also sculpted the Hammer of Zanzibar, and we can get into that in a little bit. But yeah, we were very lucky to have just amazing Latino talent of all sorts, but we really were trying to showcase Latino talent. So Norman Cabrera, again, just an amazing makeup artist, and we're just so fortunate to be able to have him. So
yeah.
No, and it was like my favorite part of Mike doing the wraparound is that I could tell him every day, Mike, you cannot fuck this up. It has to be good. It has. So I was always pushing him. You have to have a good opening. You have to have a good ending. You cannot fuck this up, because if you fuck up, the whole movie goes down.
No, and I realized the pressure of that. Thankfully, I was too excited. Something about it was exciting to me. So it wasn't until the editing room that I was like, did we make a 28-minute thing that is mostly people sitting at a table? Yeah, we did. Fuck. And so that was really kind of the challenge of is this interesting? And thankfully, thanks to the actors and the performance and everyone really brought it. It works. I think it's fine. And I was, as a filmmaker, we only have so much, budget for our thing. So I was like, I'm going to make it as small as I can until the very end. I'm going to throw everything at it. So that was a lot of fun. So.
My favorite thing about it, and that's not always the case with anthologies, is I actually, without looking it up, because I was tempted to look up who did what, I could tell every single one of you who directed each one, except one. One totally threw me a little, not of you guys. 4 of you I totally knew within seconds. One totally I didn't till the end. I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Different, but I thought that was great because to be able to see a taster of the things you guys do well in this, in a condensed piece, that's really, and they're also different. And I think that was something that also stops a good anthology from ever sitting on its laurels or being dull, right? It kept moving into different tones.
Yeah.
It's something we encourage, certainly all the filmmakers, is that we want their voice. We're so often you come off a project that is disheartening. As filmmakers, we get our ass kicked sometimes, and we go through something that we go with all the best intentions. This is going to be great, and whether it's executives or notes or producers or whatever it may be, you just the joy of filmmaking gets beaten out of you, and you're like, why do I want to do this? Why what's the point? And so the way the only appealing thing about a filmmaker to do this is that we give you the freedom. It's like, we want to hear your voice, and we absolutely chose filmmakers because we loved their voice. Gigi, because I just loved El Gigante and was like, oh my God, I wish that was part of this movie. Demian watching Terrified going like, I wish that guy would do our movie, and Alejandro.
And then we were like, well, I guess we're stuck with this because we came up with it. So it's like, let's find good people.
So I guess we got to do one too, right? Yeah.
And Alejandro made, I still think one of the best segments of an anthology I've ever seen in the one a few years ago. Your story, what was that anthology called?
Nightmare Cinema.
Nightmare Cinema. I remember just
Nightmare
watching that
Cinema.
and just being kind of knocked out by that short. So
I'm honestly, I think that short and this one are my favorite things that I have made.
Well, I think sometimes people.
Alejandro. I love that Alejandro basically makes a feature in his short. He makes a 20-minute feature, but it has 3 acts and it's a fully realized thing, and it's just really tightly packed in there. But I think they're quite brilliant.
Yeah,
it's not on purpose. But going back to what you were saying, another thing. Obviously we admire the filmmakers, but we said everyone was free to do whatever they want. And one surprising thing that happened is, I think it's what you're saying. The tones are different, and I think that I love that reflects the idiosyncrasy. Is that the word? from all of us, because Latinos, one of the things we wanted to show is we are not the same, and you show all kinds of Latinos here, and I think our cultures are reflected in the tones of the things that we did. And I always say this, but it's like Argentinians are very cerebral, so you have Demian with his Rubik cube. Cubans, we laugh at everything, so because that's how we have dealt with what happened in Cuba for over 60 years. So that's why Ed and I were the fun ones. Mexico has a history of violence, and it's reflected in Gigi's, and well, there's Mike.
Exactly. Yeah, that might fit in there somehow too.
Yeah. No. But if you think about it, Mike's family immigrated here, so there's that traveling thing that I think it's also in there. So I think the tones also reflect a bit of us and our countries, and I really enjoy that.
Now, did you?
And for some. Oh, I was just going to say, for some of the filmmakers, it's an opportunity to try something different, like Ed Sanchez, who's, obviously known for Blair Witch Project and a lot of his Yellow Jackets and stuff like that. This was an opportunity to try comedy, because why not? No one's watching. Go for it.
Even though Altered's really funny. I love Altered. Altered's one of my favorite.
I like Altered too.
Yeah, it's fun.
Well.
Yeah. Gigi, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, it's always really cool to hear from Mike and Alejandro as the producers and filmmakers of this anthology. But from my perspective as an invited filmmaker, I've been in a few anthologies, and this one, what makes it so special, it really was just that freedom to dive so deep into your heritage and your culture, and actually really represent each individual Latino background that we all carry. We're also used to, if you're Latino, you're Mexican, you must be related to Gigi, right? That's kind of what we hear all the time. And being invited in this one, it just had such a unique message that I think all of us just in general have always tried to do in our work in this industry. Yeah. And it's very cool and a big blessing to actually be able to do these kinds of movies today. I don't know if Satanic Hispanics would be able to make it 10 years ago. People would be like, what? No. I think it's very neat that we can actually do this where, authenticity and diversity is the demand for change. So it to me, it's very exciting. And I mean, Alejandro is right. I think all of our personalities were reflected in some way. Definitely mine, they did catch me in my 5 minutes of rage and anger. So I think that's why my segment's so angry and violent. But we had a blast, and it was also the first opportunity for us, Luchagor, here in Vancouver, to actually film in Mexico, because we've made Vancouver, Canada look like Mexico too many times. We've run out of places to film and actors to use, that it was nice to actually go back home for the first time. And that kind of inspired all our work since to go back to Mexico.
Now, were all of them shot in Mexico, or where were the different segments shot?
All over.
They were all shot.
Each one, everyone was shooting whatever. Like,
oh, wow.
Yeah, Gigi shot in Mexico, the man shot in Argentina.
And that is the house from Terrified, by the way.
That is the same house.
Yeah.
Ed Sanchez shot in Maryland.
Latino capital.
I could tell the historic. Yeah, it had the historic elements. So it was interesting.
And Mike and I just shot here.
Wow.
Yeah, we're both LA. Yeah.
This always kind of, and this is such like insider baseball, nerdy film talk. Did you guys have to come to determination ahead of time about look, about color palettes, about aspect ratio, like the nerdy stuff like that? Or did you just say, go for it and we'll figure it out in post?
I was a stickler for aspect ratio. I was like, it's one thing that we could do is all be 2-3-5, so that at least we're all uniform. It's all cinematic and it all, kind of fits. But visually, no. Visually, we want to see with the filmmaker.
Yeah, nice. I actually like wanted to like give them the freedom even with the aspect ratio, but Mike was like, no, okay, but you cannot fuck up, okay. But Gigi shot with anamorphic.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You guys didn't control camera choice or anything like that? Like,
no.
Wow.
No.
Nice.
But one
Well,
thing
no,
that was
we
nice
couldn't because
was
we were shooting everywhere.
yeah,
So it's not
that's
like you
true.
can say to the man in Argentina, like he was shooting his new film and then shot this back to back because I bullied him into that, and I cannot tell him, but you have to use this camera. I don't know if he can get it. So yeah.
And it's a true story. Like, he really did bully him. I was expecting at some point Demian was going to go, you know what? Fuck you guys. I'm making my movie. I have no time for this. I have other things. But sure enough, he persuaded him to go like, no, just keep shooting. Just keep shooting. Like, finish your movie.
40 minutes on the phone. It's like, I'm not going to look bad in front of Mendez. You're making this movie. No, but I'm
persuade is a Spanish translation to kidnapped, but they did.
I'm gonna send Gigi and Raynor.
But one thing that's really cool, though all the technical things we did agree ahead of time in some things, one thing that's it's always a really cool behind the scenes story to share is that a few of us were filming almost at the same time as Mike Mendez was finishing filming, and Alejandro. So, Mike is shooting the wraparound and actually texting us at the same time, be like, you're going to have to incorporate this prop, or you're going to have to incorporate the name of this character. You're going to have to do it. So, like, it was really neat because, when we joined for our segment of Nahuales, we didn't even have a script. We just kept saying, yeah, it's coming. Yeah, until Mike just had to shoot. He was already filming. So we always had to, all of us, collaborate on a very messy WhatsApp chat that we have.
Yeah, still going.
And it's still going. But I think that's what makes, this anthology really fun, is that the wraparound is awesomely connects them all so well. And it's true. Like, you guys, like both Rebekah and you, Eric, that you said the wraparound sometimes can be not the best part. And in this case, we have found people are excited to see what the Traveler is going to show next.
Oh, yeah.
And it really is Mike telling the rest of us, do this for your segment, please.
one thing we had was the order, but that changed once we saw it.
I was going to say, because that happened, my very first film was an anthology, and what we had planned out, we completely rearranged once we saw, because it was all about pacing. And I always looked at it like the Grand Guignol used to have this thing that they called, this is the theater that used to do like live theatrical horror performances. They had this thing they called hot and cold showers, where you would have one that was super fast and crazy, and then they would slow it down for the next, and then a comedy one, and then a sad one. And I feel like once you watch it at the end, you want to kind of coordinate it like that. So you change the order.
We very much took that approach. Yeah. The hot cold.
Well, not initially. Initially, it was the Mian and Gigi, and then Ed and me. And what was happening there is that you had like 1 hour of a serious movie in Spanish, and then another hour of funny stuff in English. And it was just like weird. It like the moment we saw it, like all of us, we didn't see it together. And when we went into the chat, we were all like, "Order is wrong."
Yeah.
It just was, because you're informing the audience this is what it's going to be, and if they've seen an hour of Spanish language serious stuff, and then all of a sudden it gets wacky, it's just too much. So the kind of Grand Guignol hot and cold seemed like a much better way that we'd start with Demian, then go funny, and then go back to dark with Gigi, and then go back funny. So
there's another interesting quality to it, which for people who haven't seen it yet, that I think makes it just feel a little different than other anthologies I've seen, because we keep saying shorts, right? But it felt like, and especially Gigi's, I think felt like you've entered a part of a feature film. Like you've entered, you haven't had all the setup like you would with a normal short, and you've entered this portion of film, and then you're out because the Traveler is telling a story. And I thought that made the whole thing feel more connected, more cinematic, because they didn't just feel like short films; they felt like a segment of a feature. Yeah, and I thought that was actually really effective. All the stories had that feeling, I thought. And often you get too much self-contained short films, packaged together with a wraparound. And I think maybe that's a testament to the wraparound too. But I just felt the stories were, it kind of kept your mind thinking afterwards, like, oh, I wonder what was happening right before that moment or right after, or I wonder if I can hear that song again from Alejandro's on repeat for the rest of my life.
You can. I love the song. I'm gonna send it to you afterwards.
Awesome.
That's a reference to Jonah Ray wrote an original song on the fly. We needed, Alejandro
we
thinking
were
of it.
I had no idea Jonah wrote that. I'm so impressed now.
Mike and I, the way Mike and I work, it's like if there's a dumb idea, it stays in the movie. And when we were editing, we were like, wouldn't it be cool if this happened? And I texted John and I said, we want like the character to do this, like, so if you come up with something. And 10 minutes later, he sent me the song, like him playing on guitar. And that was it. It was like, yeah, this is it. That's the song. I love it. Yeah, and then we had fun recording. I played bass and he played drums and he sang obviously. And it was a very fun thing to do. I love the song. It's so stupid.
Yeah.
So a little bit about kind of where people can see this. So right now you guys are doing a theatrical run, correct?
Yeah.
Which is
only
awesome.
in theaters. Yeah.
I love this. I love that we're getting kind of more independent horror, kind of following the Terrifier model and doing these theatrical runs, which we're going to ask you about Slotherhouse in a sec, Mike.
Okay, sure, of course.
So doing a limited theatrical right now, and then is it going wider? Are you guys heading to VOD? Like, where can people see this?
It's pretty wide, actually. It's playing in a bunch of places.
Oh, that's awesome.
I don't know the theater count, but it was almost like
it's over 500. Yeah.
Oh, whoa!
So,
congrats, guys! That's huge.
It's like every AMC and Regal, and which is like amazing for a small film like that. But like you're saying, it's kind of a different time.
Yeah.
Between Terrifier and the Winnie the Pooh movie, and there was a couple Skinamarink. There's been these kind of like little indie things, and really again, I just really am so grateful to Epic Pictures and Iconic Releasing for giving us the opportunity, because if not, it could easily just appear on a streamer and be forgotten about. But they felt like no, this is doing things. We had to wait a year to release it because we Hispanic Heritage Month seems to be the thing. That's when we premiered at Fantastic Fest, and then they were like, okay, we're gonna release it, but Hispanic Heritage Month, so we've had to wait a year, but here we are. So
it's worth it.
I actually just saw a memory. I think it was on my Facebook or my Instagram. A memory came up of a year ago presenting at Fantastic Fest. And it was really funny because how we introduced the movie, and the first thing Mike says, well, we hope you all like it because we just finished this 5 days ago and we haven't seen it. I remember.
Well, actually, you know what? It's funny, but I think literally the movie was finished 1 year ago. Like the movie's gonna come out in theaters.
That
exactly
is
1 day after.
That is so painful when you finish something and then you're literally just sitting on it for months. It feels like
it didn't do it. It didn't do it. It's been around.
But it is kind of weird. It's almost like a thing you forgot you did, because it's kind of, you go on to other life and other stuff and striking and all that stuff. And then we have a movie to come release, which that's not helping that we can't have our cast help us promote the movie, even though it's incredibly indie and there's nothing studio about it. But we're trying to get our waiver and stuff, and hopefully we'll bring in the reinforcements to help promote. So.
Well, also, I mean, you're talking about like spreading the message. I think in theaters, imagine being 13, 14. And if you guys had seen this film when you were 13, 14, if you had seen that kind of representation of yourself on screen in a genre you love, you're obviously here anyway. So maybe you didn't need it,
right.
But a lot of people.
No, but you did need it. And we had this something that we have been talking about. You two know a ton about horror movies. Tell me, from the horror movies that we grew up with in the 80s, which one has a Latino character?
Yeah, or a Latino
that one person who dies in that one scene in Friday the 13th for a second.
There's
exactly.
That's the problem.
I think there's one Latino, but that's the thing. It's like, I once dressed for Friday the 13th and tried to find the Latinos and watch all the deaths again, and I think there was one. But that's the whole thing, that we grew up loving horror. Loving a genre that wasn't really representing us, and that's partly what we wanted to do here, and also take back the reins of our own narrative and tell our own stories.
we would always say, like, the cliche is that the black guy always dies first, and we're like, well, the Latino's not even in the movie, so we'd like to do something that, yeah, totally, and let alone themes and concepts and things like that, and when it is representation, it's a little cliche. I mean, the example that I used was last Hispanic Heritage Month. They DC Comics made a Green Lantern, and he made him Latino, and they made the cover great, but at the last second they add a bag of tamales in his hand. Yeah, exactly, and it's kind of like, look, guys, I appreciate the effort, but like, Latino culture is not tacos and tamales. There is more to it, and so I thought it was kind of interesting to kind of like, look, we know La Llorona, we know La Chupacabra, but like, what else is there? There's so many like snake monsters and creatures and gods, and like, weird El Cucuy, the boogeyman, duendes, which are like little forest sprites. There's so many things that we can play with. That it's a different type of Latino story. That isn't a cartel thing, isn't a gang thing.
Rubik's Cube.
Yes, exactly.
I loved that so much, because it blended the folklore with like this contemporary geek culture. Like, it was just such a beautiful blend.
Yeah, it's so good.
And Demian confessed to us that he wrote it 2 weeks before shooting. He just confessed to us recently. Like, yeah, I came up with it the last second.
They were winging it.
Yeah.
So good.
Well, there's also a lot of just it's something we talk about sometimes. There are deeper cut movies that we get into, but like, like the last few years, I didn't grow up at all with Mexican horror films. Just never were. I grew up in New Zealand, so probably wasn't making it there. And then the last couple of years, I've discovered some of the best films have come from that golden period, whether it's like 40s, 50s, 60s, like the Witch's Mirror and movies like that, that are just phenomenal and creepy and very relatable also, culturally.
There's a La Llorona that I show in my class now that I believe is from the 30s or 40s, and it's
that same period.
Scariest visage ever, and I now use that in my class, and it's amazing.
But that seems missing from the reason I bring that up is it really does seem missing from the history text. Like, if I looked up old good horror films, it's going to be the classic Universal movies, and these other movies are far more they're doing something that gets under your skin a lot more, and just so interesting. I don't know why that part of this kind of horror history has been more or less lost.
Yeah.
And there's also that good kind of exploitation, very pulpy stuff, the Night of the Bloody Apes, the Santos films,
the El Vampiros.
Yeah, exactly. That also is kind of like, and that's the thing, we're also such a huge part of the modern horror audience today that go to see horror films, and it just seemed to kind of make sense. It's
beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, before we lose you, Mike, we got to ask about Slotherhouse. Okay. So,
have the others seen it? Wait, have the others seen Slotherhouse?
Have you guys seen Slotherhouse?
I don't think so. No, I don't believe
He's hiding it.
Okay, so a couple of nights ago, Elric and I went to see this movie in a theater. God bless theaters. About a killer sloth, and I come home and I'm researching it, and suddenly I'm like, "Fuck, Mike Mendez directed this shit." Okay, Mike.
Edited.
Sorry, that was Matthew. Matthew Goodhue. Sorry.
Goodhue. Yes.
Yeah. So but you edited. It was so cool to see your name. So tell us about Slotherhouse.
Well, look, as a Latino, we are hardworking, man. We say yes to every job, and so I can't say no to a job, goddammit. And so I literally was finishing. I didn't really even have time. They kind of like snuck it on me, kind of like, hey, we really need an editor. I think you would be great for this because you do horror comedy and whatnot. And the reason that I was kind of like thinking about it was the first slasher movie for children, and I wanted to be a part of that. I felt like, goddamn, if someone's gonna make, yes, totally, the absolute gateway drug for horror for like little toddlers is Slotherhouse, and I'm like, all right, I gotta.
Can my 4-year-old
like for 5?
Technically,
like a 4
yes.
or 5-year-old, I think.
Because
absolutely.
it's PG-13, but there's really nothing questionable in it aside from sloth-related violence where the sloth is hurting people. And so my kids had asked me if they could come see it, and I was like, I don't know, this might get weird. No. And then I got home and I was like, okay, y'all, we can totally watch Slotherhouse as a family.
Totally, right?
My kids are gonna love it.
So it was just this crazy period. I was working on Beavis and Butthead Save the Universe. Sorry, Beavis and Butt Do the Universe. And Satanic Hispanics was coming up, and I just had like 3-4 weeks that I'm like, okay, I could do it, but I mean, we're gonna pull like all-nighters, straight, and we made Slotherhouse, and it was a delightful experience. Matthew Goodhue was just a delight to work with. And I think, you know, the movie is just so strange. I was like, I have no idea what's going to happen with this film. I really was like, usually, you know, you have a sense this is going to go well, this is not going to go well. But that one, I'm like, I don't know what to make of this. This really is kind of its own unique, weird thing. So I'm really happy that it got a theatrical. And, you know, again, strange that I literally went from that to Satanic Hispanics, and then Slotherhouse is going to come out from the same distributor as us, and then Satanic Hispanics is going to come out. So there's a weird synergy between the two movies, I guess. So you know,
this might be one of the better things that came out of the pandemic, if there is such a thing, is that we're now seeing these smaller indie films do theatricals. Like, I felt like, you know, before the pandemic, we were very much just kind of everything was going to VOD, and that really reached a pinnacle during the pandemic, obviously, because that's the only place you could put it. But coming out from it, I remember the very first thing that Elric and I saw coming back to the theaters was that werewolf movie, The Cursed. And that was another one, which was like a tinier film, not tiny, it felt huge, but it was one that, you know, it didn't have a huge amount of runtime, but it was cool to see it in theaters. And then seeing things like Skinamarink or Slotherhouse, things like this, things that are not studio made, getting representation at theaters, I am loving to death. So yeah.
And I would recommend,
I think it's good for the theaters, and I think it's good for indie film. I mean, it's really kind of a really special time, and the theaters need new content, and this is kind of, you know, a window that people can discover new stuff. I hope people go, you know, that's the thing where, you know, obviously we'd like to, you know, have more representation. We'd love to make Satanic Hispanics too, but we need people to come out, support the movie, and spread the word. So
I think it is a good theater film. I think I think it's got so many different energy shifts, and it's going to be a good time for people. Watching it alone on our laptop was totally fine, but I was sitting there going, okay, if I'd seen this at a festival, there's that other level, you know, especially with the comedic parts. So
the Hammer plays.
Yeah, it's true that the Hammer of Zanzibar is fun to watch with an audience for sure.
Oh yeah. So
they
everybody,
all are, you know,
please go see this one in a theater. If you can't, you'll see it on VOD later, but this is very much a theatrical film. Excellent. Well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It has been awesome. So we will be back in 2 weeks with another Colors of the Dark. In the meantime, if you just really miss us blabbing about movies, you can find us over on our Patreon channel, Deep Cuts, where we will be talking about the weirdest of the weird stuff we can find.